you're not the only artist trying to get into the magazine. So you're competing against literally hundreds of other acts who want to get into the magazine. You know, each day I get emails with new releases or new bands touring or whatever. That's that's kind of stuff that fills up my inbox a lot of the time. So why would we cover you over them? You know, that's one thing which I guess artists have to ask themselves.
Welcome to the Music Business Facts Podcast, where successful music industry experts share their industry secrets that will help you take your music career to the next level.
G'day ladies and gentlemen, Rodney Holder here, and welcome to the Music Business Facts Podcast. This is the show where I do the best I can to try and bring you the truths about how you monetize your passion for the music business. And today's episode is proudly brought to you by Audible. Guys, as you know, audio is awesome. You can listen to it while you're doing other things, driving the car, walking the dog, whatever, going to the gym. And if you haven't already, you should check out Audible, as they have an awesome array of audiobooks that you can access. And right now you can get a free audiobook download when you sign up for a 30-day free trial at mbfbook.com. So go to mbfbook.com and sign up for a 30-day free trial and receive a free audiobook. And right now, an audiobook I'm listening to and would totally recommend is a book titled Deep Work by Cal Newport. And I can honestly say it's helping me focus and achieving much more in my day. So check out Deep Work by Cal Newport or any of the other great audiobooks for download at mbfbook.com, where you can grab your free audiobook today. Okay, so a few months ago I ran an online summit where some of my music industry expert mates came on and gave some lectures. And today I'm replaying one such lecture with my good buddy Rod Yates, who was the editor of Rolling Stone magazine Australia. Rod and I go back many years. We're both from good old Canberra, which is the capital city of Australia if you're an international listener. And Rod and I played shows together when my band Alchemist played with his band, who were called Henry's Anger. And Henry's Anger are a great band, guys, so if you're interested in checking them out, go and Google them. Anyhow, Rod is now what I would call a gatekeeper, if you like, for one of the world's most prestigious music print media brands. He's the editor of Rolling Stone magazine Australia, like I said. And even during this hectic period of digital disruption, Rolling Stone seems to be still holding its own, which is fantastic. So I suppose this talk's a bit of an interrogation, really. I did brand it as how to get your music featured in major music outlets. And I think Rod gives a pretty good insight into how you can go about trying to do that. So I really hope you enjoy the replay. And without further delay, here's my presentation with Rod Yates from Rolling Stone magazine Australia. Hope you enjoy it. My wonderful guest is a good friend of mine from many years back, Mr. Rod Yates. There he is. He's got my haircut. How are you today, Rod?
Yeah, I modelled my haircut on yours, mate. It's very popular, you know.
It is these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
How's things treating you, mate? How are you? Where are you in the world today?
Things are good, thanks. I'm in my office in Sydney, in the Rolling Stone office. Just got to work about half an hour ago, and yeah, been looking forward to having a chat to you and talking about all this sort of stuff. But yeah, everything is good.
Excellent.
How about with you?
Yeah, look, I'm really good. I'm really pumped to be doing this. I'm really excited to be talking to you. I don't know if any of my other listeners have remember, or I did an interview with you once at Big Sound, and my little portable recording that ran out of battery, so I was really spewing because I only ever actually got half an interview out of you. So I'm hoping that we can get through this one today with no mistakes.
Mate, only about 50% of what I say is worth listening to anyway, so you've probably got the good half.
We'll get into this, Rod, because I know you're a busy guy and we've got lots to cover. So, Rod, again, just before we were talking at the start, before we hit start, the lecture's called How to Get Your Music Featured in Major Music Media Outlets, and that's really what I want to try and get from you. You know, you've got a lot of experience in the industry. You've played in a band. You've got this fantastic job where you're controlling in Australia here this really reputable magazine. So we'll get to that. But just starting with the lecture, I wanted to ask you first of all, if you could just tell your story about, last time, I remember you were playing in this great band, and we did a few shows together, and then some time passed and we didn't see each other. I remember you started writing for some street press, and then all of a sudden you're the editor of Rolling Stone. Can you tell us the story of how you became the editor of Rolling Stone Australia?
Yeah, for sure. So we did. Yeah, I started writing. I grew up in Canberra and started writing in the mid-90s. I was playing in the band and knowing that even though that was my first love, knowing that there was probably a good chance that I wasn't going to make a career out of that, I still wanted to be involved in music. So I always loved reading magazines, music magazines. So I just started writing pretty much. I started my own fanzine, and we printed that up, and once each issue is done, we'd drive around all the houses in Canberra of people who'd sort of signed up for it, and we'd drop it in their mailboxes, and we sold it in record stores. And then I just started writing for anyone who'd have me, basically. So I started writing for Street Press, and some of that paid, some of it didn't. And I literally would write for anyone who'd have me, and the money wasn't important. It was about, at that point, just trying to build a portfolio and trying to build contacts and trying to learn on the job as well, because I didn't actually have any formal journalist qualifications. I just, everything I know now I learned from doing it. And things just kind of progressed. Once, you meet more people and you get more contacts, and out of Street Press writing, I managed to get into magazines and magazine writing, and then you build up, I met some contacts at different publishers, and just, a job became available in Sydney, and I applied for that. That was with Massive Magazine, and that was in about 99, I think, 2000. Managed to get that, moved up to Sydney, and then Massive ended up folding. But by that point, I'd actually been writing for Kerrang magazine in the UK for a while, and the publisher I was at in Australia was the same publisher as in the UK that did Kerrang. So we ended up bringing Kerrang out here, and I started editing that. Did that for about 4 or 5 years, and then moved on to a film magazine called Empire, and then did that again for probably about 4, 5, 6 years, and after that moved on to Rolling Stone. And how I actually got the job on Rolling Stone, I guess it was a mix of persistence and good timing. So I had been writing for Rolling Stone in a freelance capacity for a while, so I knew people on the magazine. And I was also working for the same publisher who published Rolling Stone. So when the job became available on the magazine, when the previous editor left, I was there, and the guys all knew me and knew that I really wanted to do the job. It was kind of my dream job, so I was able to talk to them about it and obviously do the interview process and all that kind of stuff. And I ended up getting it, and that was about 4 or 5 years ago now, I think. So that's probably a bit of a convoluted story, but basically that's it's a long journey. You just to start writing wherever you can and building experience, and then you just keep working your way up.
No, look, that's great, mate. And there's so much in what you said. There's a couple of things I'd like to go back to. The first thing I thought was great is that, you didn't really have any qualifications. You didn't go study journalism at uni and rack up a big HECS debt there, which is, I think, inspiring for people. Sorry, mate?
Yeah, I did go to uni, but I did arts, and which was a fantastic degree. I really loved it. But you get to the end of an arts degree, and it's not like if you've done a law degree, you kind of have your career path sorted out. If you do a law degree, chances are you're going to be a lawyer. If you do economics, chances are you're going to go into finance. But at the end of arts, I didn't really know what to do. So I'd sort of learned skills through studying and through doing that sort of education. But in terms of actually learning how to write, it was just through doing a lot of reading of other people, other journalists who I admired, and trying to figure out how they did what they did, and then, doing it.
Mate, that's fantastic. And so I like the fact that what you've just talked about, then you had obviously a strong work ethic, and you really followed that mantra, which I like to talk about, that if you want to be something, then you just start doing something. And that's how you sort of got into the industry and you made all these connections. I guess the obvious question for anyone listening, if you wanted to get into becoming a writer for Rolling Stone or any other publication, I imagine that's the advice you'd give, just start doing it.
Exactly. And, if you're really just starting out, Rolling Stone might seem like a long way away, and you might think, it's so much time before I get to Rolling Stone, or so much work. But it's the moment you start writing, that amount of time to get to somewhere like Rolling Stone immediately starts to shorten. Do you know what I mean? So if you're thinking in 2017, I'd really like to write for Rolling Stone, but it's so far away, I just don't think I can bother trying to climb that mountain. And then you look back again in 2020, and you'll be going, God, if I'd started 3 years ago, then I'd be 3 years closer to achieving that sort of goal. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean? You've just got to start. If you don't start, then you'll never get anywhere. And and I suppose the thing as well is, if you start, you've got to start because you just love doing it. I mean, you know through playing in bands, neither of us joined a band and thinking that we were going to get famous and make
I actually
money. Did you? More fool you. I mean, that was the dream. Like, obviously, you think, wouldn't that be amazing? But fundamentally, it was just getting in the room and getting in the tour van and just having a lot of fun with your mates. And it's the same thing with writing. Obviously, it's great to have goals like writing for certain publications that you want to write for, but hopefully you actually just love doing it. You love music, you love writing, and that's enough to sustain you in those times when you're trying to build contacts and trying to get a name for yourself.
Excellent. Well, listen, the point I'd like everyone who's listening to this, whether it be live or on the replay, is that, again, if you want to do something, you've just got to start. And I'm always saying this to my students, Rod, in the classroom. It's great to come and study, whatever it is you're studying, in my case, Diploma of Music Business, but you've got to get out of the classroom and you've got to actually start doing something. If you want to be a manager, start managing a band. If you want to be a promoter, start putting on shows. If you want to be a booking agent, start putting together tours. If you want to be a tour manager, find a band and jump in that van and try and, just nudge your way in and start organising stuff. So that's what I think, and it sounds like, Rod, you agree with me.
I 100% agree. As you were just saying that, I was just thinking of some of the people some of my friends in the industry and who are all bookers, managers, tour managers and whatnot. And man, they've all done exactly that. They've just started. They've just found a band that they really liked, or perhaps they were mates with, and said, "Hey, I'll manage you. I'll try and get you gigs." And that's the kind of experience that nothing can teach you. And obviously the course you're doing is fantastic, and you learn really good skills through doing that. But the real world experience of just doing it is priceless. And gosh, when I think about it, most of the people I know in that side of the industry have all done it just from doing it. I mean, an old roadie of ours, a guy who just literally started coming to gigs and would say, "Oh, can I carry your stuff? And can I help doing this?" And he's now a full-time tour manager, touring with Frenzel Rom and the Jezebels and the Bronx and doing all sorts of stuff. So that's just how it happens.
And that's right. And when you start doing those things and you prove to people that you're not a pain in the ass to work with, and you rock up on time and you don't complain and you do your job well, you make those connections and people talk about you, and that's how you start building those networks, which are so important in any business, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's the same for writing as well. I get writers approaching me all the time, and it's always a little bit of a it's not really a gamble, because they will have sent you examples of their work, so you can see that they can write. But there is always that element of the unknown when you first start a new writer coming into the magazine. And like you said, if they just do their job, get their stuff in on time, do it to the brief, and build up that sort of reputation as being someone you can trust, then that goes a long way.
Very good. Look, we've got to move on. Rod, just quickly, because this is not really where I wanted to take it, but I did want to ask you, because I'm all about the business. I love currency. I love making money. Music journalism, is it a good business to be in these days? It seems from the outside that it's a little bit shaky, a little bit sketchy. Lots of magazines and newspapers are shutting down. Can they last? Is it a good business to be in at the moment?
It's tricky. It's absolutely tricky. You can't sort of sugarcoat that. There's room for it, and there is still a business. But yeah, it's certainly it's tricky for sure. It's a good business to be in if you love it. So that's what everything I think boils down to. If you love writing and you love music, and through doing that, and you love the opportunities that provides, then that's really key to the business. So when you say, is it a good business to be in? It's a good business if you love it. If you're talking about financially, it depends. It depends. You're right. So the market is pretty shaky. Some magazines are closing, others are starting. Websites, I think websites are still trying to prove how they can really monetize their traffic. So things will sustain. Do you know what I mean? That things always rise to the surface. Something will. I feel like we're on the edge of some sort of new model coming through that will be sustainable and will work. I'm not sure we're there quite yet, because obviously we have a lot of young writers approach us, and you can sort of say, and they ask that question, is there a future here for me? And I think there is a future. I think it's just not 100% clear exactly what that future is yet, because the goalposts have moved so much and continue to move. But there is a future. It's just a matter of it actually solidifying, if that makes any sense.
Sure. And I remember you telling me last time I interviewed you, you said that sales had definitely dropped for Rolling Stone, but then they kind of just held their own and stayed at this sort of plateau where they remain today. Is that still the case?
Yeah, 100%. You know, when I say the sales have dropped, that's from when you're talking, you know, early 90s.
Yeah.
So it's got to a level now where that hasn't been the case for quite some years now. I guess we're very lucky in that the brand is very strong, and you know the name Rolling Stone is very well known. So we have that kind of core loyal base of readership, and we also have the name and the strength of the name. So that sort of means that it gets passed down through generations as well. So we're very fortunate in that position. So you know we've been able to, I guess, hold our position and continue doing some really exciting things.
Yeah. And just quickly, do you see yourself being at Rolling Stone and Rolling Stone still existing in, say, you know, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Or is that too hard to forecast for 20 years, maybe?
20 years is probably too hard. Look, I certainly see Rolling Stone existing. Like, I don't see any end to that. As for my involvement, gosh, who knows? You know, it's I love the job. It's the dream job. I've been doing it for 5 years. Whether I'm still doing it in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, I really don't know.
Yep.
I don't know. Put it this way, I have no plans to move on at the moment.
Sure. And do you think it can survive physically, or do you think down the track everything's going to go digitally and you know, magazines or physical magazines are just going to be a kind of like a relic from the past that, you know, maybe is a little bit of a gimmick or something like that?
Again, I don't really know what the future of print media is, and I think anyone who does, I just don't see how they can, just because things have moved so immensely in the last decade. You know, if you asked me 10, 15 years ago, are all these magazines still going to exist, and print and newspapers and whatnot? And I would have said, yeah, of course they are. People always like physical product, but it's proving that that's not the case. But you know, that said, I think certain time. I don't think we're going to get to a world where no magazines exist and no papers exist. So it's a matter of, I suppose, you know, it's that battle to figure out which ones are going to exist. And again, something like Rolling Stone, we're in a fortunate position because even though it's a big brand and a big masthead, it's still quite a niche title, and the people who read it are very passionate about the content. Mm-hmm. So it's not as much of a discretionary purchase for them as, say, you know, someone like that Take That might be. You know, if times are tough financially, people will still try and find the money to buy something like Rolling Stone because it's their passion. So in that regard, we're quite fortunate in that it seems to be a thing which people love. But just talking about print as well, you know, even from just talking to you know, when PR people approach me about trying to get their bands in Rolling Stone, they're always really keen that it's in the magazine, and obviously online as well, but they always make a point of saying they want it in the magazine. And I think part of that is because there's a couple of reasons. One, I think there have been studies that prove that when people tend to engage more with content in a magazine, if you actually pay $6-7 for a magazine, you're more likely to spend more time reading it, engage in the content, as opposed to if you're looking at something online where perhaps you'll just be flicking through things and read a little bit, or you might read a shorter form piece. Sure. But also, if managers here or PR people here are trying to build their band and give them a story which they can then sell overseas, for them to be able to pull out or send a PDF of a feature actually in Rolling Stone, which is, you know, a title that people all around the world recognize, it helps build a story for their band.
Absolutely, and there's that whole thing about perception, isn't there? Because, like you said, Rolling Stone's got just an amazing brand recognition in the market. And even myself, when you did that little piece on me on my podcast, it was amazing how many people sort of got in touch with me and went sort of, oh, holy shit, man, I saw you in the Rolling Stone, and all of a sudden they think you're something bigger than you actually are, just because, again, of that perception that you're actually in a physical print magazine, and albeit, you know, a very successful and famous one, rather than just being online.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's good to hear.
So, Rod, the cover of any magazine is obviously important, but how important actually is it? Like, do you see? Obviously, you would see sales, rise and fall depending on who you've got on the cover. I imagine someone who's really, really famous. Like, how do you pick the cover, and what sort of impact does it have on actual sales?
Well, I remember many years ago, I was at some sort of conference, and there was a publisher or a really experienced magazine person talking at the time, and they said something which really hit home to me. And they said, so if you're a monthly magazine, so you do 12 magazines a year, the front cover really is the way that you can try and entice people in to buy the magazine, which basically means you then have 12 opportunities in the entire year to get people to convince people to buy the magazine who may not be familiar with it. So I think I always thought that always really struck with me. I thought, but that's so true. For all the amount of content we do in the magazine and throughout the whole year, there are 12 opportunities to actually get someone to pick it up off the newsstand. It's important in as much as obviously it represents you put someone on the cover that you believe in. But in terms of sales, we find on Rolling Stone, because it has that core base, the difference between a good sale and a bad sale isn't necessarily that huge, because there are people who, A, we've got a pretty good subscriber base, so they will just get the magazine each month, and B, the people who don't subscribe but pick it up each month tend to do so regardless of who's on the cover. They just know the magazine they want and they want to buy it. You do see certain spikes, of course, all the time. When David Bowie passed away or Prince passed away, and we had collectors edition of the magazine with big features on both those artists. Those stories did really well. Adele, we put Adele on the cover maybe 16 months ago, and she went through the roof as well. But by the same token, we had the Amity Affliction on the cover towards the end of last year, and that did really well too. So I suppose it's about, when we're deciding who we're going to put on the cover, there are a couple of things which we choose. One is, do we actually believe in the artist? Are we happy for them to back them? We put them on the cover, it's a stamp of, we back this artist. But secondly, we look at the fan base. Is there a fan base there for them, and are they the kind of fan base that's likely to buy the magazine? So a fan base like the Amity Affliction is very passionate about that band, and they're more likely to buy a magazine that has them on the cover. And also the Amity Affliction are very they have a huge social media presence, we knew that they would also push the issue. So there's all sorts of those sorts of things to take into account when we're weighing up who we're going to put on the cover.
Very cool. This whole thing's about trying to get that presence into something as prestigious as Rolling Stone. I wanted to ask you, can I buy my way into the magazine? Like, if I've got a bit of a vibe happening, can I, say, Rod, can you help me out if I spend some advertising? And does that happen a lot? Do people lean on you heavily and sort of, wave you bags of cocaine under the table or anything like that?
People lean on us very heavily, but I think they know us. They know us well enough to know that wouldn't work. The key to having a magazine that your readers can believe in is that they have to know it's authentic, that at the end of the day, we're not an arm of a certain band's publicity machine. Do you know what I mean? We're not there to glorify a band or tell everyone that this band is so good if we don't believe it, because it is really easy. It's an interesting conundrum, because as much as we rely on magazine sales for revenue, we also rely on advertising for revenue. So you always have that. It's a really fine line to walk between taking record labels' money or whoever's money. We have lots of consumer people advertise with the magazine as well. But then while taking that money, but then also reporting on the band, completely independently and objectively. And it's happened in the past. It's happened in the past where we've given a record, 1-star review, and our advertising person has come to us and said, "Oh, hey, they've just booked in an ad for this record," and you sort of say to them, "Well, you might want to let them know we've given the record 1 star." and we're pretty straight up about that, because advertisers do get annoyed when they advertise and then they've spent money on a full page ad, and then the record they're advertising gets slammed. So we tend to be pretty straight up with people about that. But at no point does money or advertiser support ever affect the editorial. Like, you've got to really make that a really black and white distinction. Like that can never kind of get crossed that line.
Okay. Well, that's good, because that covers that question pretty much that I've got on the screen there about, advertising compromising potentially your artistic integrity or editorial integrity.
Right. Sorry, I'm probably rambling.
No. I do want to ask you straight out, though. If I was an independent artist or an independent manager or an independent label, if I do come to you with a small pile of cash, and not many independents do have piles of cash laying around, but if I was to, can you kind of say, look, there is a vibe happening for this artist. We will advertise, but can you do an editorial on us, Rod? Can you give us a bit of a exposure? Because although you said you're not a part of their promotional machine from your perspective, certainly as an artist, absolutely you are.
Absolutely, but look, I honestly cannot think of a case where someone has come to us and said we've got a wad of cash and we're going to advertise. Can you do something in the magazine? That might be a conversation they've had with the advertising, the sort of our advertising director. But you would hope that an artist, if a label or a manager really believes in their act, you would hope that they're not leading with we've got lots of money to spend on this act. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Band stories, we'll cover bands if they've got a story, if there's something, if there's a lot of radio support, or they're selling out rooms, or they're just, really relentlessly touring on the road, or we believe in their music, that would hopefully be what a manager or a record label is going to lead with, as opposed to we're going to support this with advertising. And look, again, that's not to negate the importance of advertising. It's crucial to us. But to answer your question as a flat out yes or no answer, the answer is no. Like, I don't think anyone's ever actually said that to me. And if they would, the fact that they've got money isn't the most important thing.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting, because in my experience, it kind of is that little bit way with, some other maybe sort of more street press type publications and things like that, because they rely on that money, so they need to get it in.
Well, they're free, aren't they? That's the thing, they're free. So that's the only way they make money is through advertising.
Yeah. Look, I think you pretty much covered that next question. I mean, the way I see it, the edge that the Rolling Stone has, you have this incredible brand, you have this incredible back history, you've got this incredible prestige, and the fact that, you are actually making money, I'm assuming, by selling copies, and you're not relying on purely advertising to bring your income in. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. And it's one of the things which I guess we always pride ourselves with Rolling Stone is the access that we get to artists. And that's one of the edges that I think the magazine has over some of the ready available internet content is, last year, for example, I was really fortunate enough to go over to New York and to interview Metallica at Electric Lady Studios, and then to speak to Ryan Adams a few days later at his studio in LA. And that's the kind of access that we will get on the magazine, because we want to write 6 to 8 page stories about it, 4 to 5 to 6,000 words. So there's really in-depth kind of stories. So I guess that's one of the edge that the magazine has over some of that readily available internet content, is that A, it's exclusive, and B, it's in-depth. Yeah. And perhaps not every internet outlet gets that sort of access.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's move along, Rod. Pink. Totally understandable why she's on the cover. Ed Sheeran, totally understandable. Miranda Kerr, I'm a big fan. She's absolutely gorgeous. She looks particularly gorgeous naked. But why put her on the cover of the music magazine?
Well, okay. Firstly, that was before me, so I had nothing to do with that. Okay. But look, there are a couple of things to that, I guess. You just called Rolling Stone a music magazine, which essentially it is. But I think we also refer to ourselves as a popular culture magazine. So that's why we have actors on the cover, for example. In this country in particular, I think Rolling Stone is known as a music magazine, but we are broader than that. We are a popular culture magazine. So that issue was a themed issue, which was the green issue. So, and I'm just looking at the headline there, and I think Miranda Kerr obviously had some sort of green. She was pushing something at that point, which was obviously some sort of conservationist angle. As for why she was on the cover looking like that, well, I guess, Rod, because obviously that's the kind of image which is going to attract eyeballs on the newsstand and get people buying it. That would have been the main reason for that. But she obviously would have agreed to do that shoot as well. So something like that doesn't happen unless you get the buy-in of the actual person on the cover. Yeah. So that's why that would have happened. But it's a really interesting question. But I think, like I said, even though we're regarded as a music magazine, we also do look a little bit broader than that.
Yeah, sure. I'm just curious, Rod. Would you in 2017 put that cover on today with you as the editor, do you think? And the second part of the question is, I imagine you'd cop a fair bit of criticism for, again, perhaps, that sort of feminist point of view that you're really, some people would say, well, I don't think you're exploiting Miranda Kerr, but perhaps some people argue that you're exploiting women and you're playing off that stereotype of women as sex objects and things like that.
Sure. It's a really, really, really good question. Would we do that now? I mean, I think that was probably only about 6 years ago. So it's not like, it's not like that was a cover we did 20 years ago or so. Mm-hmm. Look, I think we'd certainly look at doing something like that. I wouldn't say a blanket no.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Attitudes are different now, and if you look at the covers that we've done since then, certainly there's been nothing that revealing. But gosh, Rod, it's a really good question. I really don't know to answer that. I think it would depend on who we were looking at, for example, okay. who we're actually putting on the cover.
Yep.
If we were to do it again, maybe we'd have a dude on the front without any gear on and chains around his testicles. I really don't know. We'd have to wait and see.
Cool, mate. Well, we'll move on again. This is the main thing that I guess a lot of people want to hear you talk about, Rod. I'm an artist. I'm a manager. I'm a promoter. I want to get eyeballs. I want to get that prestige. I want to get in the magazine. Rod, tell us the story. Apart from being a good musician and having a bit of a vibe going on, how can I get your attention? How can I get you to write about me or my band or my act and give me a write-up?
Okay, well, I don't think there's any one answer to that. I mean, there are a few different answers. One is that you, as the artist, you've got to do the work. You've got to get yourself to a position where you almost make it impossible for us not to cover you.
I like that. So
that might be...
Can you give us some strategies on
that? Well, get out, play, record music, release it, work hard. Try and get people in rooms. You end up hearing about word gets back to you when bands are doing tours in venues and selling them out, or you look at tour dates, and even if they're only 200 or 300 seaters, if they're sold out, then obviously there's a vibe starting to build on this band, and that will pique our interest. Mm-hmm. We have to believe that you're an artist that we think has something to offer to our readers, and that's across all genres. That's not to say that whether that's a pop artist or a hip hop artist or a metal artist. I guess if we believe that you've got that you are something which we want to support, I feel like having a story is always a good thing as well. Mm-hmm. And when I say having a story, again, it sort of ties back to that thing about building up a profile. So, you've done the work, you've gotten the van or you've gotten the plane and you've gone and you've done shows and all your music's on Triple J Unearthed and maybe you've got a little bit of airplay. That's the kind of stuff which starts to build a bit of a groundswell and we will that will start to come to our attention, because one thing that's really important to think is, your band or you as a solo singer-songwriter or as a DJ or whatever, you're not the only artist trying to get into the magazine. So you're competing against literally hundreds of other acts who want to get into the magazine. Each day I get emails with new releases or new bands touring or whatever. That's kind of stuff that fills up my inbox a lot of the time. So what makes you? Why would we cover you over them? That's one thing which I guess artists have to ask themselves. I know that one of the next topics is hiring a PR agency a good idea, and I think if you have someone doing your PR for you, I think that's a really strong step towards getting in the magazine. It's not the only step, but I think it's important, and this is why. It's because basically we get calls and emails every day from PR people, but also from independent acts and acts who don't have any representation. And the difference between those emails is that we have a relationship with the PR people. So, and that's something which is built up over many years as well. So if they come to us pitching a band, there's just I suppose there's a wall that's already been broken down. We're familiar with this person. We know how they operate. We know the kind of acts which they take on to PR, and also they know how to sell a band or an artist into a magazine. And again, we get so many emails each day that if you see these emails come up from people who you recognise, then you are more likely to click on them first.
Sure.
And have a dialogue with them, because you have that dialogue with them every week or every couple of days. It's not to say, we certainly, independent artists have contacted us in the past, and if we've listened to what they've done and we've liked it, then we certainly put them in the magazine. And coming from the scene musically that both of us come from, Rod, I think we both put a lot of importance on those independent acts and trying to support those independent acts.
Yep.
But I just think it's really easy to get lost in the sheer number, the sheer volume of emails that we get. Whereas having someone, a PR agent, can just kind of help you cut through a lot of that.
Yeah, look, I can only imagine how many emails you get, Rod, or how many emails that try to get into your inbox. And again, I think for anyone who's watching or listening, this is a really massive takeaway. Because you said this on the podcast in episode I did with you as well, where you sort of said it was very surprising to me, and it does make sense. But you must just get absolutely smashed in your inbox. If I've got no connection with you, if I'm just trying to cold call you or send you unsolicited stuff, you're probably just going to hit delete, or I won't even be able to get to you anyway. And yeah, sorry.
I mean, look, and I will say this hand on heart, like I never press delete, like I never ever do that, and I definitely try and listen to as much stuff as we get sent in, but sometimes it's not possible, or sometimes it might take a month or so to get to. So sorry to interrupt, but I just want to make clear that we don't, if it doesn't come from a PR person, that doesn't mean that you're going to get deleted or anything, or you're not going to get looked at, but that relationship just makes things a little bit easier.
Clive sent through a question. He wants to know, he's sort of talking about, does that mean that, the PR people are now kind of like the new gatekeepers? How do you avoid that?
It's a great question. And no, I don't think they're the gatekeepers, because that suggests that they have, just because a PR person approaches us about a band doesn't mean that we're going to do something on them. It just means that we're more likely to have the conversation with them. That's all. So no, they're not the gatekeepers. And I understand that independent bands may not have money to hire a PR person, and that's a fact.
Yep.
And that's why I want to stress that we obviously do still look at emails and phone calls and whatnot that come in from bands that aren't represented by a PR agent. But what I would say is, if you don't have the funds to hire someone like that, that's why it just becomes even more important that you're out there doing the work and building a reputation as a band that is building a fan base or is making really good music, because that is ultimately the kind of artists that we want to cover. And if you're doing that and you're getting that groundswell all on your own back, then we might end up coming to you.
Look, again, Rod, that's fantastic. And for anyone listening, there's some great takeaways there. Some of the ones I just wrote down again, going back to my friend John Sadley from Roadrunner Records, he said, don't be shit. That's a good starting place. Be good. John Watson, the very famous manager, he sort of talked about and reinforced what you said, have a good story. And again, it's the way I see it, Rod, and I'd like to get your comment on this. The music industry is a little bit of a popularity competition sometimes. It's not necessarily how good you are, but it's how popular you are, and that, people are coming to see you and people are sharing your stuff and downloading your music and streaming it and wearing your shirts and all that type of stuff is all going to go towards helping you perpetuate that motion and that promotion and get the attention of people like yourself. Is that a fair enough assessment?
Yeah, to a point. I mean, you mentioned popularity. Well, it's called pop music and pop culture. So it's popular culture and popular music. But, God, you only got to look at things like The Voice and Australian Idol as the ultimate of that thing that you just mentioned there. And, we rarely, if ever, I think, feature artists who are on actually, I can say we never feature artists who are on The Voice or who are on Australian Idol. We have featured artists who perhaps have had that in their past, but have since being on those shows have kind of forged their own careers. But that's a huge example of those shows basically being made to sell music through TV. Yep. You know what I mean? Or basically music being made to sell ratings. And that's and bolster the iTunes charts for that week. And so that's a great example of popular not necessarily meaning good. Even though a lot of those artists are very talented, that you look at the songs that get released on iTunes, most of them they're doing covers and whatnot. And
sure.
So that's a whole other conversation, I think. But so I think quality has never been necessarily lined up with what's popular.
Yeah. Rod, Katie, my friend Katie Williams wants to put you on the spot and wants to know, can you recommend any good PR people? Where's a good place to start? Is that something you want to do publicly?
I would be more than happy to send you an email, Rod, with some names and contacts, which you could pass on to Katie. Is that possible?
Absolutely. Yep. So that would be brilliant.
I can do that easily.
You could be on commission here, Rod, getting a little kick.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
I don't think just lastly on that PR thing. There are certain PR people tend to specialize in certain areas of music. So if you are a band and you're thinking, right, okay, we should hire someone, and obviously you're looking to see that they can do it within your budget, but you should also be looking at what their track record is in.
Sure.
So some PR agents will specialize in metal or hard rock or hip hop or whatnot. It's just good to know that, to tailor to get the right person for your band.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Now, look, Rod, again, I think you've really covered that, and you've talked about my next point there about what you're looking for an artist or a band when you're doing a feature on them. I think you've shined the light on it a little bit. I guess a lot of it's pretty obvious, but that thing on PR is very, very interesting. What else we got coming up here? Yes, this is always a good one, I think, when you're dealing with people in the media. Where's the fine line, Rod, between, hassling you and reminding you and saying, hey, Rod, I'm here, and hey, can you help me? And then absolutely being such a pain in the ass that you're thinking, would you just piss off? I want nothing to do with you anymore.
Oh, it's such a fine line. You've got no idea how fine a line it is. But you know what? You've got to be persistent. I get some. Okay, so if I talk about people who want to write for the magazine, but I think that these things can still be applied to artists who want to be in the magazine. Sometimes you get an email and that's it. You won't get one. You'll never get a follow-up email or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you'll get an email and then I might reply to it saying, look, there's nothing we can do right now, but get back to us in 3 months or something. And some people will. And that's the kind of persistence which I think is really good. It's always just, God, it's such a good question. It's such a good question.
Rod, you are generally one of the nicest guys I know. You're so calm, cool, and collective, seemingly. Has there been times when you've just gone, would you fuck off? You're a pain in the ass, or internally at least?
Of course. But the thing is, you've absolutely got to. You've just got to keep knocking on the door. And it doesn't matter if you piss. You don't want to piss anyone off, but I feel like you just have to try and be aware or sensitive to the message, to the signals perhaps you're being sent. If for example, you're in a band and you send in your latest album or your EP and it doesn't get picked up on the magazine, then there's no reason why you wouldn't send us an email when you're going out on tour just saying, hey, just to let you know, the album's done really well, or the tour is going really well. We've sold this many things, or, Triple J picked up on this song, and that's it. Do you know what I mean? There's absolutely no harm in keeping in touch and just sending an email, just say, hey, look, this is what we've done. This is what we've done. There's absolutely no harm in that at all, and I think it's good to do that kind of stuff because you need to be in our faces. We talked a little bit earlier about the volume of emails we get. Well, unless you're being up in our faces and remind us of your band all the time, or the fact that you're a writer, then you'll just get lost in that. I think the thing is, don't send something in and then call the next day, and then call the next day, and then call the next day. Realize that sometimes it can take a couple of weeks to get a return email or a return phone call or something like that. I would say the best way to contact us is always through email, just because everyone's busy, and it just when things are on email, you can get to them when you can get to them. But I think there's no harm in to continue doing that. But I think you just got to also try and be aware of the signals you're getting. If you've been told no for something, then that perhaps means, like, if we're not going to cover the album this time, that doesn't mean you shouldn't contact us the next time you do an album or a single or a tour or something like that.
Sure. Hey, Rod, my listeners and viewers would want me to ask you this. Again, putting you on the spot, buddy. If I want to get into Rod Yates' inbox, Is it possible? How do I do it? And do you want to hand out an address?
Yeah. It's just you send me an email, which is ryates@rollingstoneaus.com.
Yates,
which is at Rolling Stone AUS, like Rolling Stone Oz.
Yep.
.com.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. You want to walk that fine line, get Rod's attention, don't piss him off. And this great mantra, I always like to say, if you don't hear back from somebody, that's not necessarily a no. It just means that someone like yourself is extremely busy. And it's never a no until it's a no. It's a maybe, right?
Yeah, that's great advice. It really is. That's a really key thing. It's a really good point. If you send an email and you don't get a reply back, then the door is open to send another email. 100%. Until you get no, then you just keep sending emails. But I suppose you just don't send it day after day after day after day. And you might just wait a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever you can do.
Yeah.
That's a really, really good point.
And the other strategy that I learned early in my career is to find out when your deadlines are, and when I know that Rod Yates is going to be busy as hell and he's not going to want to talk to anybody. So is there a better time?
That's always a good. Yeah, there is, probably towards we always tend to go to deadline midway through the month. So I think pretty much any time from, say, the last week to last week and a half of the month and the first week to week and a half of the month, they're probably really good windows to email.
Mm-hmm.
That's when things are going to be less sort of, less hectic.
Great strategy, mate. Great strategy. Vanessa has asked, what kind of emails catch your attention, Rod? Do we send you one with a big, pretty bunch of flowers on the front, or, what's going to get the attention?
Short, sharp emails. So
short, sharp, Vanessa.
So we don't necessarily want paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. It's kind of get to the point and just try and be quite concise and succinct with that. And you know what? One thing that this might be a personal bugbear is that sometimes emails can be quite arrogant, or you don't need to tell us that you're the greatest writer or the greatest band in the world, and we need you in Rolling Stone. Just state your case. Just be who you are. Do you know what I mean? Just send us an email. This is my writing. Hey, I've written for these people. Here's a link. Always include a link to your writing or a PDF or whatever. That's really easy. That's really key. The thing you got to do in sending an email is to make it as easy as possible for the person you're sending it to hear your music or read your stuff.
Yep.
Don't make them go searching for it. Include a link, include an MP3, include a PDF, whatever it is that you're doing. But just be kind of short, sharp, to the point, and I guess another thing, when you're sending in attachments and whatnot, just be aware of the size of them. It's it's not that big a deal in the office here, but sending an email of 10, 15, 20 meg is going to get some people, on the wrong side.
Totally. Yeah, I always suggest that everyone has their electronic press kit as a link that the person can go and check out online rather than attachments. Yeah, that's a good idea. As long as it's really clear, here's the link and it's got everything up there and it's just easy. Mm-hmm. That's the thing to do. Yeah. Just quickly, this goes back a little bit to the bribery sort of stuff. But what about if I send you a big bottle of scotch and a big box of chocolates, and is that going to get your attention?
Yeah, 100%.
There you go, guys.
No, it's not. It's not. Strike that. It's not. No, literally. Rod, I remember. Sorry to keep harping back to the days when we were in bands, but I remember when we would do a demo, we would put together this package and buy this kick-ass folder and laminate everything and send it off to A&R people and whatnot. And sometimes we receive those here as well. And it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. It doesn't help sell the band or your writing at all. It really boils down to what's that?
The best bribe you've got, mate? Tell me something great that you've been sent in order to try and get your attention.
Oh God!
Other than cash and coke.
I really look. I don't know. It doesn't happen that often. You get most of the time it's actually thank yous as opposed to no one.
That's cool.
Really, honestly, no one. I don't think anyone sent us anything lavish and said someone did get a cake made up in the shape of a guitar.
Nice.
This kick-ass, which was really great, and they sent it in, but again, that was more of a gesture of I don't know, appreciation for stuff that we've done, as opposed to, can you do something on our artist? I really think that an artist or a writer, the thing you should be selling is the actual content or the music. That should be strong. That should be strong enough to get our attention. You're not going to get anywhere by trying to send alcohol or whatever it is that you want to send. That's not the key to what we're trying to do here. It's always just about trying to cut through the bullshit and get to the point. And is what you're selling, or is what you're doing, is that worth covering? That's the end game. That's what we look at.
Cool, mate. Hey, Rod, I can't actually see a clock on either my computer or on my phone because I'm doing this Facebook Live thing. Do you know the time?
10 to 10.
It's 10 to 10. Cool. So I'd like to throw it open to my guests who are here today, or my attendees. We've only got a few. We've got Clive and Hayley and Katie and Monty and Nat and Rosemary and Sean and Vanessa. Would any of you guys like to ask Rod a question? Just put your hand up and I'll go through to it, or you can put it into the question box. Sean, you've got your hand up, so I'm going to go to you, buddy. I'm hoping that your mic's working, but let's see. How are you, Sean? Can you hear me, mate? This is the fantastic webinar live problem. Sean, are you there, mate? He's gone quiet. Anyone else got a question? Okay, Katie's got a question. Katie, you've always got questions. I love you. Katie, how you going, mate?
Hey, guys. All right, not too bad. I still am trying to get used to the hands up, hands down thing, so I didn't actually have a question, but thank you so much to both of you. Like, seriously, Rod, you do an incredible job. You just blow me away. And, yeah, I've learnt heaps about when I actually get my artists up there and rolling. I'll get them into Rolling Stone, hopefully. So, yeah, thank you.
I'll just keep sending you those payments and keep saying that.
Thanks, guys.
All right, see you, mate.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, well, no one's got their hand up. Sean's still got his hand up, but he's not going to talk. So I guess that's it, Rod. Look, you've given us a really great insight into, how to get your attention. And again, a lot of it's pretty obvious, isn't it? But I don't know. If I was managing a band right now, I think I'd be still sending you the not only the digital stuff and the email stuff, but trying to get your attention, especially in light that you reckon it's not happening too much. I think it might be a point of difference if you've got a good product at the end of it anyway.
In terms of what, sending physical product and that kind of, like sending CDs and stuff, do you mean? Or
yeah, I think so, absolutely. And maybe putting it in a big envelope and with your name all artistically done and maybe flashing lights or something. I don't know.
Look, sending physical product is great. It's really good because it's right in front of us. It's not in an inbox. It's not
sure.
It's not a link. It's actually right in front of us. I suppose the thing to just bear in mind with magazines quite often is that it's quite a long lead time. So you want to factor that into your promotional campaign. If you're trying to get into a magazine, you might want to be getting us music a good couple of months before the record is out, or the EP is out, or whatever it is that you're promoting.
That's a really good point that I didn't bring up. So thanks for sharing that, mate. And is there anything else, Rod, you feel like for my listeners, these are people that are trying to make their way in the music industry as writers, as songwriters, as singers, as artists, as managers, as bands, as solo artists. Anything I didn't ask you that you think you can leave with a parting piece of guidance from your wonderful years of wisdom in what you do?
Well, the only thing I'd say is not to be discouraged. I hope nothing I've said today might discourage anyone. I think we've all, it's all comes down to just to keep doing whatever it is you're doing. Do you know what I mean? And you will get roadblocks along the way, and you'll get hurdles and whatnot. But if you really believe in your writing or in your artists or in your band, it's really important just to keep pushing, because doors do open and will open. With persistence, and sometimes you're in the right place at the right time, sometimes you're not. But the key thing is to always just keep hammering away, and you will get our attention. You absolutely will. It's just that persistence, and like I said, I hope nothing I've said has been discouraging, and because it's always worth just putting your absolute everything into whatever you're doing, and results will happen.
Yeah. Look, Rod Yates from Rolling Stone magazine, really appreciate your time. Thanks again for all your wisdom. I don't think anything you said was discouraging. It was all very nice. You're too nice a guy. Just had one last quick question come in, which I think, if you don't mind taking. Clive
Sure.
says, I've got an act with 6 million YouTube hits. Wow, Clive, that's amazing. On a song building to a Euro tour, new release of a single. What item should I envisage pre-release for Rolling Stone, and should it be primed for the actual release date?
What
Lead time, you're saying, you meant?
Lead time, right. So for the album, are you saying the album is coming? Is that the...
Yeah.
So how long? So. How much?
European tour and a release of a single.
Release of a single, okay. Look, it depends. It's a little bit hard to know without knowing anything else about the act or who they are. It's probably best if Clive shoots us an email and just, and that's probably the best way, and actually tells me a little bit about the band and what they're doing.
Sure. Because
just with that information, it's kind of hard. But look, as a rule, it's always good for a couple of months to know, 6 weeks or so in advance to know what's going on and what you're pitching.
Cool, mate. Well, Rod, I know you're a really busy guy, mate. I really want to thank you for giving up your morning and talking to me. And
yeah, pleasure. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you again. Are you coming to Big Sound this year?
Yeah, hope to. Yeah. Should be. It's always. I see it's just growing by another day, so that's another hangover to have, which I look forward to. But if anyone has any questions as well that they haven't thought of by now, they can always just send them to you, and you can forward them on if you want. Or obviously I've said my email address, so send them to me.
You might regret saying that when I send this out to my list of subscribers. But anyway, thanks again, mate. Appreciate your time. Have a great day.
All right, mate. Take care.
Thanks everybody who... sorry?
Thanks. Yeah, I was just going to thanks for listening. Whoever's listening.
No worries. Thanks for everybody who rocked up and attended. And, you all have a good day. I've got another one coming up in about 15 minutes with Angela Mastrogiacomo, who's an American publicist. She's a wonderful person. So you might want to come back and register for that one. Thanks, Rod. Have a good day, buddy, and I look forward to seeing you soon, mate.
Thanks, mate. See ya. Thanks again.
See you, champ. Well, there you have it, ladies and gents. I hope you agree that there's some pretty good takeaways in that discussion. And as always, I'd love to know your thoughts. I'd love you to hit me up and say good day at facebook.com/musicbusinessfacts. Or I'm also on Twitter at musicbizfacts. And if you'd like some highlights of the show notes, you can also head over to my show notes page at musicbusinessfacts.com, where you can type in Rod Yates into the search bar. And if you found any value in the presentation, ladies and gentlemen, and you'd like to donate and help me out, you can go to paypal.me/musicbusinessfacts. So again, I would gladly support any donations, and also any of you artists or musicians and you'd like to try another form of monetization for your free content, you should look into paypal.me, because occasionally you do get a little surprise from people who want to support you. So there you go. All right, until next time, people, thanks so much for listening again. I do really appreciate your support, and I know that your time's precious, so thanks for spending it with me. Again, I really hope you enjoyed the presentation, you got some value from it. And until the next episode of Music Business Facts, I'll leave you with this little quote. Without vision, even the most focused passion is a battery without a device. And that was said by Ken Arletta. Until next time, guys, this is Rodney Holder signing off for musicbusinessfacts.com. Talk to you later.
You've been listening to the Music Business Facts podcast. For more essential music business tips and information, visit musicbusinessfacts.com.